Hello.
Welcome back to the Space School, otherwise known as PBSW, your favorite hangout place, and today we're back with a brand new Star Wars story. Today we're going to take a look into what would have happened had the Dark Lord of the Sith raised the Jedi's prophesized Chosen One. How would Sidious obtain young Skywalker, and how would the Jedi handle the loss of their Chosen One? Would Sidious become attached, or would he treat Anakin like a rabid animal, the same as he did Maul? Before we begin this video, let's smash that like button, try and shoot for 2,000 likes in the first 24 hours, and I release What If Anakin Fell in Love with Barriss Offee. This is a video you definitely don't want to miss. We are also going for 50,000 subscribers, so join the Space School if you can be part of our incredible journey here together. If you have ideas for videos, leave them down below. I do write comments, but I don't do crossovers. And one last thing, if you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon, Twitch, and community Discord. Special shout out to George Story, Benjamin Wells, Gord, and Chancellor Lauren Sanders for being Grand Tier supporters, and Jay Hoffman, Icy Raptor, and WarPigman308 as Master of the Tier supporters on our Patreon. Thank you all for supporting the channel. You guys are helping fund massive projects in the future. If you want to learn how to win a free side story collectible, watch to the end of the video and I will show you how. Our story begins inside of the Jedi Temple. It had been about 4 years since the invasion of Naboo. Anakin Skywalker was brought to the temple after being discovered on the remote Outer Rim world of Tatooine. He was a slave to a junkyard owner that was also a Tordarian fool. Anakin freed himself in a place bet by Qui-Gon Jinn on him winning the Boonta Eve Classic. Anakin had the opportunity to return to Coruscant. There he would meet the Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, and once the invasion of Naboo was ended, with the death of Qui-Gon Jinn and the planetary victory for the people of Naboo, Anakin was brought into the Jedi Order. Life at the Jedi Temple was always meant to be different than it was on Tatooine. Anakin had to adjust to the massive hallways, the smooth cylinders, the echoing hallways, carpeted floors, and the people who all donned the robes of peace. The Jedi had a superficial reputation in the Outer Rim. They were seen as masterful warriors of peace and justice in the galaxy, and the galaxy had no reason at the moment to believe the Jedi had nothing to offer them. Of course, the Jedi were kind-hearted individuals who seemed to have the intentions of others in their mind, but inside of the temple, they felt a whole lot less of that. They went from being gods that had nothing and no one that could stop them to the everyday person. Of course, for Jedi who were raised inside the temple, it was a much different experience. For them, they looked up to the Jedi and believed in their code. For a slave boy from the dump called Tatooine, things were much different. Anakin had training that he needed to accomplish, and he was already ahead of his class. The issue for Anakin was how advanced he was. While he was abused and bullied just about every day by his classmates for being an outsider, Anakin had the highest midichlorian count inside of the entire Jedi Order. Anakin knew this, and he didn't let it get to his head. Well, too much to his head. Anakin was very easily at the top of his class, and while he had some time until he would be able to beat Master Yoda and Plo Koon in combat, Anakin was focused on the day that would come. Anakin was able to spend time in his classes succeeding, but it sucked because he couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't do anything, and Anakin's progress in class wouldn't happen. He was stuck in place, without the ability to go further into his training. While in the 4 years he had become a truly exceptional student inside the Jedi Temple, Anakin Skywalker had a lot of internal struggles. Normally back at home, he would talk to his mother about them. The bond between mother and son was inseparable. But now that Anakin hadn't had his mother for so many years, he had to learn how to be reliant on himself, especially when it came to his vast amount of emotions that he couldn't talk about. Anakin was stuck inside of a religion that didn't allow for members to share their emotions. Training was brutal, and it wasn't because of the work. Anakin loathed his training because he was surrounded by bullies who belittled him and put him down every chance they got. Anakin struggled with this a lot. Anakin had been called several things over the years, but nothing bothered him more than being called a slave to his emotions. Anakin was very emotional, and sometimes it showed, but that word, slave, it dug its nails into Anakin's skin, and it never released him. These foolish children never understood the true pain of being a slave. They were all given a place to sleep. They were all fed with no uncertainty, and their struggles were training, not a life or death situation that would harm someone close to them if they didn't comply with every order. While Anakin had his struggles with the Jedi and their code, he wasn't hell-bent on leaving the Order. He did have his moments, times where the only thoughts that ran through his head were escaping the clutches of the Jedi Order. While this would be the easy way out, Anakin was determined. He knew he could become a great Jedi, and it seemed as much as if the odds were against him. He was told ever since the moment that he arrived that he was meant to be the most powerful Jedi the Order had ever seen. If that were to be true, he would strive to achieve that goal. If Anakin's mind, being the Jedi's chosen one, deserved more respect, seeing that he never got the respect that he decided that he needed to deserve. But he decided that he had to work hard to achieve that kind of respect. Though for Anakin, he would begin to struggle with that steadfast mentality. Anakin would begin to be troubled by terrible nightmares that drove him into near insanity. Anakin had dreams and even nightmares before, but these were terrors beyond his own belief and his own comprehension. Most of the night terrors were about the things, the atrocities that the Jedi would enact on him. Instead of what his classes and his classmates were putting him through, it was individual members of the Jedi Order that were consistently hunting him. These dreams had Anakin running through the massive hallways he knew so well at this point, trying to escape them. All of them were masters, and they were all trying to kill him, from Mace Windu to Obi-Wan Kenobi to Plo Koon. And while these motives were never matched up with the Jedi who was trying to enact these vicious acts against Anakin, it was terrifying. It wasn't just an every so often type of dream. These dreams were consistent, every night occurrences that traumatized the boy to his core. Anakin was always in fear, and now that fear was being amplified by the Jedi who were trying to kill him. One dream after another, there was no escaping. Anakin would wake up, panting from one dream, and then once he eventually fell back asleep, he would fall victim to another Jedi Master. Anakin would begin to lose sleep repetitively. So many nights without a full rest, he began to lose his mind, even in the living world. He was so distracted by his inability to sleep, hallucinations and crumbling emotions would continue to plague him as he tried his best to stay attentive in his daily activities. Anakin's lack of ability to succeed would become apparent to the teachers and even the students around him. They never asked, though. It was common for students to fluctuate in their training from top of the class to bottom of the class, just depending on how much a Jedi matured, though the Jedi never thought of why it was that their students were so inclined to do so well and fail so easily. The Jedi training after these night terrors began would become harder than ever before. Anakin always dealt with these trainings with a simple ease, but now it was apparent more than ever that Anakin needed to work his hardest to achieve even the littlest achievement. One night, Anakin awoke from one of these terrible nightmares. He couldn't bear to do this anymore. It had been at least 4 weeks since these night terrors began, and he couldn't keep trying to go back to sleep. Anakin needed to escape this. He got up from his little bed and he made his way to the door. While there were 10,000 Jedi inside of the Order, most of them lived on the same time zone. There were still those who wandered the halls at night, and most of them were Jedi Sentinels. Their long flowing white robes matched with a mask to conceal their identity. They were the guards of the Jedi Temple, and most of the time, would frequent the temple when most of the Order was sleeping. Anakin opened the door to his room and looked out. He looked left, and then he looked right. The coast was clear, as he set his sights down the hallway. Anakin left his room and closed the door behind him quietly. Anakin made his way down the corridor. He avoided temple guards when he saw them, but even more so he found himself to the location he was trying to get to. And while Anakin really had no need to avoid the temple guards because it wasn't really illegal for him to be out, it was mostly suggested not to be outside of your room in the middle of the night by the teachers of the younglings. Anakin didn't want to cause any ruckus, he just wanted to get to a place of serenity, a place of peace, a place to calm his mind. As he turned the corner and walked up some steps and stepped outside, Anakin looked up as he saw the night sky and the lights shimmering from the city nearby. The temple wasn't surrounded by light pollution, but here in this courtyard, it was clear. Anakin looked up as he walked through the temple's garden. Anakin kept walking until he looked down and stopped, as if he had been caught doing something wrong. Anakin looked into the old, weary eyes of a Jedi Master. Anakin looked at the Master and waited a blasting. It was the middle of the night, and it was extremely uncommon for younglings to be out and about, especially without an instructor. Anakin knew the face of this old Jedi Master. He'd seen him several times, though the old Jedi was usually sleeping when he did see him. Master Tera Sinube looked at young Anakin Skywalker and requested that he come take a seat. Anakin slowly moved over and sat himself down next to the Jedi Master. Tera asked what was troubling the boy, as Anakin sat himself down quietly. Tera knew that Anakin was here for a reason. Anakin mumbled inaudibly as Tera asked him to speak up. Anakin said that he had another nightmare. Sinube asked what the dream was about. Of course he could tell through the Force that it was something that was truly bothering Anakin, but he wanted to hear Anakin say the words. Anakin said that he had another dream of Obi-Wan chasing him down inside the Jedi Temple, trying to kill him. He was then cornered by Windu and Yoda, who both ignited their lightsabers from the opposite end of a long hallway. Anakin said he was concerned, and then he turned to the side and saw Master Yaddle leaping at him with her lightsaber ignited. Anakin was awoken by the sound of a blade reeking through his ears. Tera sighed as he looked at Anakin. He asked if he was afraid of becoming a Jedi. Tera knew that sometimes it was scary becoming a Jedi. Sometimes younglings didn't know how they truly felt about becoming Padawans, and sometimes it came out as a Jedi acting violent towards them, especially one that was maybe going to become their master. But this was something malignant. Tera acknowledged that there was something fundamentally wrong with Anakin's dream. And it wasn't the fear of the Jedi, it was something else, and it was tearing Anakin apart from the inside out. Tera told Anakin to focus on the Force. The tree was life. Tera wanted Anakin to focus on that life. Anakin closed his eyes, and the terror was still filling him. Tera placed his hand on Anakin's shoulder as Anakin concentrated harder and harder to get past the mental block. Tera told Anakin to feel the Force within him, let it guide his motion, not restrict it. Anakin pressed harder into the Force, focusing all of his energy on the light. The nature of the Force was balance, and Tera told Anakin to focus on the balance rather than the light. Tera was guiding Anakin through the terror of the Force. He knew that Anakin could do it, but the child needed guidance and the proper training to do so. Anakin moved back from the polar opposite of the light as he felt the balance, and then he removed the darkness from his mind as the dreams became absent and his mind became free as a result. Tera smiled as he told Anakin that he did well, reminding Anakin that a Jedi's true power comes from balance. Just like life, there are ups and there are downs, but always in the middle, there is balance. Anakin smiled as he sat with Tera for a couple more hours. The Jedi Master's presence was all the more soothing to Anakin, like a grandparent of sorts. Across the city, Sidious stood at an altar in a room as rage boiled up inside of him. He was deterred by someone inside of the Jedi Temple. He knew that Anakin wasn't wise enough to figure out how to supersede the darkness with balance. There was absolutely no way that Anakin would have figured this out alone. Sidious didn't doubt his future student, but he did doubt the training of the Jedi. Sidious knew that he would have to conjure up a more erratic and explosive dream to plague Anakin with. He would drive Anakin away from the Jedi Order so that he could turn to the dark side of the Force. Sidious thought on this while he planned out the best way to destroy the hopeful boy that was Anakin Skywalker. Sidious wanted to bring him down into the depths so that he could turn him into an agent of evil. Sidious conjured up a new plan to use nightmares as Skywalker's demise from grace. The sun would have to rise on Coruscant again, and before Sidious can enact this new plan, it would have to set. The sun was rising and Palpatine had to return to the busy life of Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. When the night came around, Sidious harnessed the dark side of the Force, and Anakin's dreams took a different turn. Because of Tera's short teachings, he was able to fend off these nightmares with a true balance in the Force. Anakin inside of his dreams was a grown man, and he was facing down everything that came his way. He used the Force to guide his movements, and he was flawless in the execution of all of them. Anakin was able to return from his dreams, and woke up after a full night of rest. At this moment, Palpatine knew that he needed to work much harder to get to Anakin. Anakin was a powerful Force user, and he had deterred his will. Palpatine was the most powerful Sith Lord in generations, and he was just deterred by a 13-year-old boy. Anakin, after rising from his slumber, felt more powerful than ever before. The simple words of an ancient Jedi Master like Sinube inspired him to trust in the Force and allow the Force to guide his movements. Anakin had no clue that it was the dark side of the Force that was trying to corrupt him, but he made his presence in the Force almost impenetrable. Sidious, having realized how much Anakin had grown in just such a short period of time, realized he would have to work much more to pull Anakin away from the light. Anakin was a wonderful user of the Force, but if he lost his faith in the Jedi, or even feared of something, that's it. Anakin needed to be made to turn against the Jedi, or make it feel like the Jedi were turning against him. It was a bit of a long shot regarding the Jedi's ineptitude, but it might work brilliantly. So that night, Palpatine returned to his altar once again. He was going to implement dreams of Anakin's mother dying. It would be just enough to set Anakin off. Sidious thought this would be brilliant, as he began speaking in the ancient dialect of the Sith, summoning his Sith spells. Anakin was laying in his bed. His eyes were asleep, as they opened with yellowish tint lining across them as he stared at the ceiling blankly. Anakin was gone in this moment as his mind began to rumble with terrible, terrible thoughts. Sidious took complete control over Anakin, and now he was going to fill his mind with the pain and suffering that would accompany his tenure within the Jedi Order. Anakin started tossing and turning as he tried to escape the dastardly trick that Sidious was enforcing onto him. Anakin was more helpless than a slave. He couldn't do anything. He was lost. Anakin then watched as people were shackled up and forced to do labor. He watched as his mother was thrown down the banks of a lava bed and burnt to a crisp as she called out for her son's name. He watched as slaughter of the innocent scourged every known planet in the galaxy. Anakin twisted in his sleep, but he was helpless. He couldn't do a thing. The dark side was so extremely powerful, Anakin had no power against it. He fell helpless into the void as he watched the Jedi slaughter, and then be slaughtered, as a fire was written on the walls of every corner that the Jedi would be the death of him. Anakin then saw Qui-Gon. He was brutalized. He looked as if he had been abused for longer than the last 4 years, as the words came out of his mouth telling him that Obi-Wan was lying, and said that he was being held captive on the monastery on Toth. He needed help, and he needed Anakin to come alone to help him. Anakin jolted up from his bed, and his eyes returned to their natural color. Anakin ran from his bed and opened up the door. His heart was panicked. Of course, this was a terrible decision, but Anakin was in between the state of being fully awake and being fully asleep. Everything was confusion, and his eyes were still blurry. All he knew, though, is that Master Qui-Gon was still alive and still needed his help. Anakin bolted down the hallway as he ran for the best place to get off-world. He wasn't concerned about the Jedi. He wanted to make sure that Qui-Gon was alright. He saw Qui-Gon burnt on Naboo, but if there's any chance that the Jedi had betrayed him, Anakin needed to find out. Anakin ran into the hangar bay as he searched for a ship to take. There was a small Jedi starfighter in the hangar bay, as Anakin ran and jumped into it. There was about no one in the hangar bay at the moment, as the doors began to open. Anakin turned the fighter on. It had been since the Battle of Naboo since he had last flown a ship. He hovered the starfighter off the ground, and then sent it into the air as he piloted the ship forward and out of the Jedi Temple's hangar bay. The small vehicle made its way into space as Anakin locked into a hyperspace ring and plugged in the coordinates to Toth. It was a planet out far in the Outer Rim, and Anakin had hardly ever heard of it before. It was a jungle world, and he was going to find Master Qui-Gon. In hyperspace, Anakin fell back asleep, and had an easy rest until he arrived outside of the system. He unlatched the ship from the hyperspace ring as he took the ship down to the surface of the planet as he flew by the massive monastery. Anakin landed his starfighter down in front of the monastery as he got out of the ship and looked at the towering structure that stood in front of him. Anakin looked around as he took in the sight of the massive buildings. He walked into the courtyard. He could feel something was off. As his hand hovered over his lightsaber, he steadily walked forward as he saw the massive doors open. Anakin walked inside as he heard the voice of Master Qui-Gon Jinn. The sounds of pain crawled out of his mouth as he asked for Anakin to come and save him. Anakin let his guard down as he began to run towards the sound of Master Qui-Gon's voice. When Anakin came around the corner, he looked into the eyes of the Sith Lord himself. There was no Qui-Gon, all just a manipulation of Anakin's emotions. Anakin slowed down as he pulled his lightsaber from his belt, asking what happened to Qui-Gon. The Sith Lord pulled Anakin's lightsaber from his hands as he expressed that he would no longer need this weapon of a Jedi. Anakin was confused as he looked at Sidious. The Sith Lord walked forward as he explained that there was no escape from the dark side of the Force. It was natural within him. Anakin stepped back as he felt himself lose control of his body. Anakin had a wave of terror shone down on his body as Sidious looked at the boy, and expressed that if he didn't comply, he would understand true fear. Everything that he had just dreamt was a tool of the dark side. It wasn't that the dark side was evil or bad, it was calling to Anakin. Sidious framed this as best as he could to make it seem like there was no wronging in the actions that he took against Skywalker. He wanted Anakin to believe that the dark side was calling out to him, asking him to join it. Sidious expressed to Anakin that he would like to make him his apprentice, so that he could teach him the true power of the Force. It wasn't that the Force was lying or even trying to mess with Anakin, but it was bringing Anakin to Palpatine so that they could be together and train with one another. Anakin listened as Palpatine expressed that the dark side was calling to him because the light side was too weak to handle with his own presence. If Anakin only understood what he could accomplish with the dark side, he would be unstoppable. Anakin listened as Sidious told him to kneel. Anakin reluctantly did so, as Sidious hailed him as Lord Vader. Anakin had no clue what this meant, but he understood he was in for the journey of his life. Sidious would tell Anakin that it was time to leave. Anakin was upset about Qui-Gon not being alive, and asked about the man who was meant to be his teacher. Sidious expressed that he was truly aligned with the dark side. Qui-Gon's ghost must have been deeply attached to Anakin to try and pull him to Toth to meet Sidious here. Anakin asked if Qui-Gon knew Sidious. Palpatine turned around as a smile rang out from under his robes as he told the boy that he trained Qui-Gon. Anakin couldn't believe it. Then he asked why Qui-Gon was a Jedi. Sidious wound his evil hands around the boy's mind as he told Anakin that Jin had his differences with Sidious, and they peacefully parted ways. Qui-Gon believed that there was something pulling him to the Order, and he believed that if he took that journey, he would find someone more powerful than any other being that had ever existed. Sidious smiled as he gestured his hands towards Anakin, suggesting that Qui-Gon had a premonition of Anakin's existence, and that Qui-Gon became a Jedi to go and find Anakin. This was a massive ego boost for Anakin, as he asked why the Jedi never mentioned this. Palpatine turned around and told Anakin to walk with him, as he would explain the rest. Sidious told Anakin that the Jedi had their power in the galaxy, and when anyone had power, their greatest fear was losing said power. Sidious continued as the young Jedi followed closely behind. Sidious pulled a small black robe out of a closet and tossed it at Anakin. He told the boy to put those on over his Jedi robes. Anakin was questioning, but he did so and followed the Sith Lord to the shuttle, where there was a caped man waiting. Anakin followed Sidious aboard the shuttle as the ship departed. Sidious continued instructing Anakin about the Jedi and how they used their power to influence the Republic politically. Sidious expressed that the Jedi had so much influence and they were so corrupt in their head regarding the politics of the galaxy. Sidious continued talking with Anakin regarding everything that he wanted to teach him, and then he introduced Anakin to Dooku so that Anakin could understand that Dooku would instruct him on the planet of Korriban. Anakin didn't quite really understand, but as they made their way to the planet, Anakin could quickly understand that this was what he was now a part of. As they landed on the dusty planet, Anakin followed the two older men out of the ship as they looked at a massive Sith temple. Anakin followed them as they got closer and closer to the temple. Sidious turned around as he lifted his hand ever so gently and lifted a dozen pillars that were leading into the Sith temple as he looked at Anakin. Sidious explained that the dark side of the Force was a pathway to many abilities, and some of those abilities were considered to be unnatural. Though it wouldn't take long for Anakin to achieve power like this. Anakin watched in awe of what Sidious was doing. Sidious lowered the pillars as he told Anakin that Tyrannus would teach him in the ways of the Force. The only names that anyone knew of each other was Vader, Sidious, and Tyrannus. Sidious told Anakin that the dark side of the Force would teach him many things. If Anakin continued training with Dooku, the time would come for Anakin to be trained under him. But Anakin would need to work harder than he ever had before. Sidious would leave Tyrannus and Vader behind. There would be no way off-world for the two of them, until Sidious returned. It assured Sidious that Dooku would train Anakin in the ways of the Force until he returned. Sidious would leave the planet, and Dooku and Anakin would begin their training. Sith training was a lot more grueling than what the Jedi made Anakin do at the temple. The Sith made you suffer, and Anakin did suffer. Dooku was harsh to the boy, and he was unrelenting. Dooku took an immediate disliking to Anakin because of how arrogant the boy was. Dooku always had a great appreciation for Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, but Anakin was most certainly not like the other two. Sure, he was just a boy, but it meant for Dooku that training Anakin would be an insufferable task. Dooku would torture young Skywalker, building up a true amount of hate inside the boy. Anakin began to exercise himself in the ways of the dark side. Most of his understanding of literally anything was built on hate. While Dooku resented Anakin, he taught the boy more and more of balance within the Force. Dooku himself wasn't a true Sith Lord. He was more so of a dark side user. His morals were a bit bent out of shape, especially since he left the Jedi. But Dooku taught Anakin how to utilize the dark side of the Force without becoming a vessel of evil like Sidious was. Within a month, Anakin was already able to lift all 12 pillars with ease. Anakin was a powerhouse in the Force, and having the ability to focus on his skills and not be limited by a teacher. Anakin's progression amplified extraordinarily. Anakin was so quick to learn, and he was able to succeed in his new role. Being a student to Dooku meant that he would excel greatly within the span of 2 months. Anakin was learning more and more about the dark side of the Force itself, and really understanding what he could do with the power he had within the Force. During the second month of training, Anakin would be reunited with Sidious, and then the training would get exponentially harder. For the Jedi inside the temple, an investigation would be launched and led by the lead Jedi investigator, Terra Sinube. Anakin's starfighter would be tracked back to Toth, but the trail would go dead from there. The Jedi weren't able to find much more regarding the Jedi's Chosen One and how he went missing. There was no reason to believe that Anakin had left under his own will. Most of the Jedi assumed that Anakin was stolen when he went to Toth. Sure, it could be said the Jedi didn't pay much attention to Anakin to really understand, but as much as Anakin wanted to leave, he never would have done it, especially if it wasn't for the dreams of Qui-Gon that he had. Sidious's training of Anakin would build a bond between the two of them. Dooku would have the chance to return to Sereno and retire himself from Korriban for a little bit of time. Sidious knew that keeping Anakin on Korriban would be worthwhile, but even more, Anakin needed to experience more and more of the dark side. Sidious was able to relate to Anakin because both of them were great pilots, and Sidious expressed to Vader that he would have the opportunity to take a fighter out across the galaxy and begin to work hard on the studies of the Sith. Anakin wasn't fully committed to the Sith ideology. He fit somewhere in the middle, on the spectrum of where it came in terms of Force users. He wasn't fully aligned to the light or to the dark side. And that was special thanks to Dooku and Terra Sinube. They both implemented teachings of balance, and Anakin found himself aligning inside of the middle, which only ignited the flame of the power that sat within him. Anakin was a truly powerful being, especially within the Force, and everyone around could feel it. Anakin excelled with Palpatine's teachings, especially with how truly powerful Sidious was. Though Sidious never made the mistake that his master made with him, Anakin was never taught everything that Sidious knew, and neither was Dooku. Though Sidious never understood that keeping Dooku and Anakin alone for 2 months would supplement Anakin's desire to stay close to the middle as he was. While he was naturally gifted in the dark side, it never controlled him. The light kept the balance within Anakin, but the darkness gave him his truest power. Anakin would be sent across the Outer Rim to complete special missions for his master. On Crayus 2, Anakin would go to discover the path of pure power. Anakin found on Crayus 2 was a bit weird to be on. The world was visually blinding, especially because of the consistent fog that covered the world and the lack of sunlight. Crayus 2 was a former Sith homeworld after all. Anakin became trusting of the Force, especially when he was on Crayus 2. That was his first mission. Anakin then from Crayus 2 would go to Atheus, where he would find a Sith wayfinder that would take him to an undisclosed location. On Atheus, Anakin would learn the powers of Force Drain. With Force Drain, Anakin would be able to steal the Force from those around him, though Anakin never had the need to do so. He had the power of the Sith, but the heart of the Jedi. Anakin would never find himself a need to harm a living being with Force Drain. Anakin, with the Sith Wayfinder, would find himself an ancient hidden world of the Sith. This world would be called Exegol. Anakin was sent on this journey by Sidious so that he could discover more of the power of the Sith. Anakin was being kept isolated because Sidious wanted him to learn the dark side of the Force without any influence from Dooku, even though he had no reason to believe that Dooku would just betray him. Anakin would spend a couple weeks on Exegol, where here he would heighten his true power within the Force. Little did Anakin realize how valuable this power would become in the future. It wouldn't be long before Anakin evacuated from Exegol to return to his master on Coruscant, where he would continue his training. while Anakin, over the course of the past year, since being stolen from the Jedi Temple, became one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy with regard to the Force, though Anakin was lacking his ability to wield a lightsaber. Sidious had been keeping his lightsaber for the past year. It was a missed opportunity for Anakin to not train with a lightsaber with Dooku, but Sidious wanted to instruct Anakin in all 7 forms. There was a lost form out in the galaxy that Anakin had discovered, and while he took the texts that taught him how to use such a power, he never unveiled them to Sidious, that he knew of this power. Anakin, as the next few years progressed, would excel in lightsaber training. Anakin used Force lightning especially well, and he knew how to harness the dark and the light side of the Force. Because of Terra Sinube, the light still lingered inside of Anakin, though there was one thing that was currently bothering Anakin, and it was the fact that Sidious, like the Jedi, restricted him from seeing his mother. Anakin desperately missed her, but because of his extensive power in the Force, he knew that Shmi was doing alright. Anakin, at this point, after spending several years under Sidious's lightsaber training, was unmatched. He taught himself how to use the lost form called Form 9, and the form was so incredibly powerful, it took most of Anakin's power to even use it. It was so much speed and precision that the Force moved everything like a blur, that not a soul could defend against it. This lost form used 3 strikes and the opponent would be dead. Anakin practiced the skills of the lost form on a daily. Anakin was truly powerful, and this power was unmatched. There was one thing that he never learned from Sidious though, and that was how to use the Force and the midichlorians to protect or to create life. Anakin desired this power. He believed that it would be a great help to the Force, especially to save those who help the people of the galaxy the most. The entire time, Anakin had no clue that Sidious was the Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. The bond between Master and Apprentice was pretty tight, but Anakin was never fully aware of Sidious's position of power in the galaxy. Nor did he realize that Sidious was bringing the galaxy into a path of war. The teachings of Sinube and Dooku had a great precedent in Anakin's life, and they greatly affected his view on the galaxy around him. Anakin saw the growing influence of slavery in the Outer Rim, but when he wanted to stop it, his master restricted him. Anakin knew he could easily dismantle Sidious, so he asked why he wasn't allowed to help the people who were so clearly in need. Sidious knew he had to act fast on how he was going to rebuttal this. He needed to find a way to walk around this conversation. Sidious expressed that the slave growth was going to assist the galaxy from the evil of the Jedi. Anakin didn't quite understand, but as Sidious had a lot of explaining and manipulation to place onto Anakin's head, he continued, telling Skywalker that the Jedi were at the head of slavery in the galaxy. Anakin caught a glimpse of the lie before his eyes. He heard it in Palpatine's voice. He realized that his master had made a mistake. But Anakin was already playing his master. He knew that Sidious was hiding information from him. This only confirmed his suspicions. He knew Sidious wasn't dumb, so Anakin played dumb, so that Sidious wouldn't think twice about what he said to Anakin. Anakin just accepted what his master told him and dropped the subject, though the nightmares would begin. Originally, Anakin thought it to be Sidious, but it wasn't Sidious. It was dreams of his mother dying, and he knew that she was in trouble. Anakin, without telling a soul, left Coruscant to find his mother. When he got to Tatooine, he found his former captor, demanding to know where his mother was. Anakin would get the information he needed, and when he got the information, he went to the Lars farm homestead to find his mother. Anakin found that she wasn't there, and so he went out into the sands of Tatooine to find her. Anakin eventually found his mother, and she was captured by the Tusken Raiders, but she was still alive. Anakin tore through the Tusken Raiders with great precision and dedication. His strikes with the blade were delicate and quick, and his usage with the Force was unheard of. Anakin was able to save his mother. While the topic of attachment was much different for Anakin at this point, he didn't find attachment to Padme. It wasn't any teaching, rather it was Anakin's mindset. He'd become so attached to the Force, he found no need to be attached to a person. Anakin, in his mind, existed in a higher plane of reality. He existed on the plane of the Force. Anakin would leave Tatooine after saving his mother, and then he would be dragged into the unknown region. He would wake up inside of a massive planet. He had no clue where he was. The ground was beautiful and the day was remarkable. Anakin was approached by a translucent woman with greenish and golden clothes. She had flowing hair and she spoke to Anakin with gentility. Anakin followed her to a massive temple on the planet. As the day turned to dark, there was a great change within the Force. that Anakin would meet the Ones. He was brought here to restore the balance because there was an offset of balance in the galaxy. The Father would introduce himself as Balance. Anakin looked at the Father and asked how he could restore said balance. The Father expressed that staying here would keep the balance in the galaxy. Anakin said that the Jedi believed he was the Chosen One, but he wasn't a Jedi anymore. The Father told Anakin that the Chosen One is a real concept, but the Jedi didn't realize that their overzealous focus on the light inhibited their ability to thrive within the Force. The dark side was extremely powerful, but it plagued the Force itself. The Father told Anakin that the son and daughter were becoming too much for him to maintain. Too much light, too much darkness. Anakin told the Father he wanted to help him, but he didn't know how to do so. Because Anakin had to reset the balance in his own universe before he could help reset the balance of the Force. The Father understood, but he expressed that if Anakin were to go down this path, he would have to act fast. He would need to dominate the Force with his own presence, and use himself as a sacrifice to remove the plague that was a Sith from any power in the galaxy. Anakin understood this as he was released from Mortis, and returned to Coruscant. While the only seconds in the real world had passed, the galaxy was on the edge of war, and Anakin needed to stop it before it tore the galaxy apart. Anakin moved to Coruscant to find that war was already about to commence. But even more than that, Anakin discovered that his master was the Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. This enraged Anakin to the core, as he believed that the little bond that existed between Sidious and Vader was all founded on a lie. Anakin didn't know if he could trust Tyrannus, nor could he trust the Jedi. But he knew the best resolution would be through the Jedi because their essence didn't harm the Force itself. Anakin decided that he needed to approach the Jedi Order and inform them of their deepest fears. Though before he could inform the Jedi Council, they were dispatched to the battlefront to fight the Separatists. Anakin thought momentarily. He knew that the galaxy-wide conflict was exactly what the Father was talking about, and this meant that Anakin was failing his mandate to protect the galaxy from all-out conflict. While Anakin had very little political power, he knew that he had to extinguish the darkness and bring the light back into balance, and balance back into the Force. Anakin would travel to the Senate building. He was going to make a change for the galaxy. He knew that Sidious had a massive part to play in the galaxy, and while it was Sidious who showed Anakin the true nature of the dark side, it wasn't Anakin's beliefs. Anakin would enter the Senate building and use the Force to subdue any guards, without harming them. The reason he had to hurt Palpatine was because the galaxy was in conflict because of him. Anakin walked into his master's office as he watched Palpatine's face with calmness heighten into fear, and then anger. He rose from his desk as Anakin raised his hand and pulled Sidious across the room with the Force. Sidious was powerful, and his aurora was too, but he couldn't defend against the might of Skywalker. His balanced essence made him a force to be reckoned with. He looked at Sidious in the eyes as he wrapped his hand around Sidious's neck, and ignited his lightsaber into the chest of the Sith Lord. The balance in the galaxy wasn't resolved yet, and Anakin, having very little political power, knew he had to do something to resolve this. Anakin traveled back to Sidious's lair. He had to find something he could do, and then he found the information he needed. He knew how to end all of this. While the clones were bred for war, he wouldn't harm them, nor the Jedi. They could still be saved, but mindless droids across the galaxy could not be stopped from harming the lives of innocents, and that was what Anakin cared about. Anakin reached down into the setup of Sidious's altar and began his own ritual. The mix of light and dark created a powerful Force aurora. The power that Anakin learned on Exegol mixed with the balance of power that Anakin had. He reached into the Force and found every single droid foundry, base, facility, and ship, as he used the Force to crumble their structures all at the same time. Anakin's power was unmatched, though this caused a lot of strain on him to do. As he did it, droid control ships, facilities, and factories were all torn apart simultaneously across the galaxy. Anakin wasn't done though. He knew that the Jedi needed to lose their power as well, but he wouldn't kill them, because they did bring light to the Force. He needed to show them that they were not embodying the Force though. Anakin reached down into the Force, and the Jedi Temple, several miles away from him, began to crumble. Anakin waited for the Jedi to escape the temple as he crushed the building with the Force. The powers learned on Exegol were ancient powers of the Sith that were extremely heightened by Anakin's balance within the Force. Anakin allowed Dooku to live because he wasn't truly evil, but Anakin would remove the Sith altar as he made sure to destroy the remnants of the darkness in the galaxy. Anakin was dedicated, and as he began to sort through the imbalance, he was faced by the wills of the Force. Anakin had never discovered these beings before, but they were here to let him know that he was on the right path to restoring true balance in the galaxy. Anakin left Sidious's lair as he took his starship to the crumbled Jedi Temple. Anakin approached the Jedi who stood outside of their temple, as he opened up the cockpit and held the ship in position, with the Force as he stood on top of the ship's wings and spoke to the Jedi. He told them that their way of life needed to change, or the Force would continue to loop itself around into chaos. Millennia since the Force had been truly at balance. These wars would continue if the Jedi didn't reform their ways. Anakin told the Jedi that they needed to follow him if they wanted their order to exist. Their order needed to be changed into a balanced group in the galaxy. The Jedi were confused, but after several hours they were gathered together and ready to leave the planet. With the Jedi removed from political power and the galaxy confused as to why the separatist movement crumbled within an instant, it wasn't bias, but it was an antagonistic force that was trying to oversee the downfall of the galaxy. Anakin then relocated the Jedi to Tython. There was a remnant of a Jedi temple here, but it was away from the head of power in the Republic. Anakin then rewrote their code. A new code meant to never be changed. This code would focus on balance. While Anakin had nothing to say regarding the council members and their decisions, he told them that if they went back to their old ways, their temple would be again destroyed. Anakin was very serious. He was focused on absolute balance, so he informed them that they needed to stick to that balance. Anakin also relieved the slaves of the galaxy before he left to relieve the ones. With the galaxy being changed, Anakin would make his return to Mortis and take care of the ones. His power was unstoppable, and his connection to the Force was as well. There was no love for him. Anakin existed on a higher plane of reality, becoming a piece of the Force itself, and transcending the living reality to become a part of the Force. Anakin left the galaxy in a different place than it was when he was brought into it. Because of Sidious's training and the influence of Dooku and Sunube, Anakin was able to find absolute balance within himself and within the Force. Anakin changed the galaxy, and with the political atmosphere clear of the influence of the Jedi and the Sith, the political spectrum of the galaxy would begin to focus on peace, and the Jedi would become like the Barrando Sages and the Dathomir Witches, where they would use both sides of the Force without corrupting it or doing damage to it. Anakin returning to Mortis would reform the Ones and replace the Father, so that he could relieve himself from holding the balance in the galaxy. Anakin reached his true state in the Force as the galaxy moved into complete balance forever. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to George Story, Benjamin Wells, Jay Hoffman, Warpigman 308, Icy Raptor, Gort, and Chancellor Lauren Slim Sanders for supporting the channel. Let's hit 2,000 likes on this so we can see what if Barriss fell in love with Anakin. If you want to see a video, let me know down below. I read our comments, but I don't do crossovers. Check out the Twitch, Discord, and Patreon if you want to be a part of the community or support me in other ways. Now, for the giveaway, we have to hit 35,000 subscribers by July 31st at 11:59 p.m. We got like 1,000 subscribers in the last day, so we literally can pull this off. I will be giving away one of these Sideshow collectibles to one lucky winner. The winner gets to choose whichever one you want. Go down below, there's a doc link that is pinned on the comment. You click on the doc link, you write your name down below, and that's how you win. Anyways, let's talk about our story. Woo! Interesting story. I don't know how I feel about it yet. I think it's definitely an interesting story, to be honest. I think the story itself is different, and I think that's what I wanted to do with this. I wanted the story to be 100% different. I didn't want the story to fall in the lines of everything else that you've ever seen before. And I think that Anakin, with the training of Sidious, could honestly reach his full potential. And I will say that Sidious would have driven him to the dark side, and I believe that Sidious would have pushed him into the dark side, but I didn't think that story was I thought the story was originally gonna go that way, but it didn't, which is what was really interesting to me. The really interesting part to me was the fact that it didn't go the way I thought it was gonna go. I thought it was gonna be really dark and grueling, and what ended up happening was I had this very nice moment with Terrace, Sunube, and Anakin, and that moment in the story is a changing point that highlights what's gonna happen in the story, and that also happens with Dooku in the story too. Dooku was a very idealistic thinker, and that's how Qui-Gon got to thinking the way he did. And I think, for example, if Qui-Gon was the chosen one, this is kind of how it would go. And I think that influence that Dooku had would influence Anakin to become a higher level thinker than just a Jedi or a Sith. And that's what I wanted to highlight at the end of this, is that Anakin wasn't just a Force user. He was the embodiment of what the Force was. He was light and darkness, and he set out to restore the balance. He wasn't fighting for the Jedi, he wasn't fighting for the Sith. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy ever. And that's what I wanted. Anakin is meant to be this most powerful being ever, and I wanted to exaggerate that as much as I could and have fun with it. And again, remember, these are what ifs. They're not serious. It's okay. It's just a story. You can turn it off. But Anakin in this was meant to become the most powerful being you have ever seen him become. And the one thing I wanted to highlight at the end of this story is the fact that it's not bias. Me choosing the Separatists to suffer rather than the clones. Anakin would see the clones as living beings, and I do believe he would see them as living beings, not just fighting machines. But the droids are not living beings. He can crush their foundries and destroy their foundries without really hurting anybody. Obviously, the Nomodians that would be on the starships would be affected by that if their starships were destroyed. But in terms of the droid army, that was a malignant force in the galaxy. The clones were not. Yeah, the clones had Order 66 in them, but without Order 66, the clones are actually people. They're real people, and this is based off of what Plo Koon said about them, saying that, I value your lives more than my own. And that's the same thing that Anakin would have here, is I value their lives because they are real people. They are real people, and even though they're genetic modifications of the same person, they are all individuals of that same person, whether you want to call that, the 1 million personality disorder, but the truth is the clones are all individuals, and Anakin would respect that they were all individuals. While I think this story is definitely one of the more out there stories, I think it's going to be one of the more unique stories that I've ever done before, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to turn out this way, but I think it turned out this way for the better. For the better of the story, for the better of everything. I think that having this story turn out this way was better than just having it turn out where he's all dark side or all light side, We always see that. We always see Anakin be the true Sith Lord in the galaxy, or we see him be the true Jedi in the galaxy, and I didn't want that. I think Anakin, for once, needed to be what he was meant to be, bring balance to the Force, and I think that's what he did here. I think at the end, he becomes the Force. He becomes one with the Force. He doesn't just become a Jedi or a Sith. He transcends that reality, and that's what I wanted to focus on with his attachment to Padme, is that after all this time, he wouldn't just be attached. Obviously, he still cared about his mother, and I'm not denying that he cared about his mother, but the thing that I wanted to highlight is that Anakin would have realized that he was on a higher plane of existence, and this higher plane of existence was the Force itself, and he wouldn't really fall for other attachments like falling in love. That was, in a way, below him. Anyways, though, I really hope you all enjoyed this story. If you did, leave a like down below. It helps out the channel. Let's try and get to 35,000 by the end of the month. Again, July 31st at 11:59 p.m. We can do it. I believe we can do it. I want to hit that giveaway so that we can start doing another giveaway for 50,000, which is just around the corner as well. We're beyond the halfway point, so let's do it, you guys. We are on the way to hitting all the goals and doing all the giveaways, so thank you all so much for all your continuous support. Anyways, I love you all, spread the love, my friends, and always remember, may the Force be with you.